Hi, and welcome to the Future of Dermatology podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Farah Kamangar, board certified dermatologist. We are here to talk about anything and everything dermatology related. You'll hear from me and my guests who are dermatologists, physicians, experts, scientists, residents, and medical students in the field of dermatology. We publish weekly, so if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button and show us some love, and thank you for joining us. Welcome again to the Future of Dermatology podcast. Today we're joined by Janelle Ball, who is Biologic Coordinator Extraordinaire. So lucky to have you here and to go over very specific expertise that you have that I think a lot of other people don't have. So it's so great to have you here. And I should also mention you're the CEO and founder of BC Educators that I would love to hear about. So Janelle, thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And feel free to add anything to, you can start as far back as you like to the future of your background and of what's led you here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background is, I started as a biologic coordinator. I want to say it's been about 9 years. I've worked in Durham for about 15 years, but I started front office. I kind of moved around to a few different areas, helped with a lot of like rooming patients, and I did some MA work, but not a lot. I think it kind of happened right when I started doing the biologics. And I think everyone quickly realized that, okay, yeah, this is a lot of work.
Right.
But it was one of those things where I just kind of got thrown into the role. And, it was, hey, can you do the prior authorizations for us? And I'm like, sure. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it quickly became something that I really enjoyed. Obviously, I think nobody really enjoys sitting on the phone for hours at a time. But I think it was more of, just the fact that we were able to really help patients, and you could see the difference that it makes for patients when, they come into the office and they're struggling and they're frustrated. And then we're able to get them access to a medication that would otherwise just be really difficult to get. So it's really just exciting to be able to have part of that. Um, so I really made it my goal to learn as much as I could about the access portion, about the prior authorizations, and making sure that I can get patients, the medication as quickly as possible. And, I knew that there was a lot of different hiccups and things that, would come in to play, like, dealing with the insurance, sitting on the phone for hours at a time. A lot of those things are really frustrating. And I really wanted to try to figure out a way that I can really help others navigate that process. And, when we are dealing with, um, insurance companies, or ways that we can make it easier as far as streamlining the process. Cause I'm very like, I need to have detailed process. I want to map it out because there's so many different steps and so many different things that go into it, that you kind of have to be organized to be able to get patient medication. And it's not just the prior authorization. There's so much more that goes into it. It's educating the patient, making sure that they're on board. And, when I get a request for a biologic or a specialty medication, I want to make sure that the patient understands that, okay, it's not just running to the pharmacy to pick up your script. It's, I've got to do a prior authorization. I've got to make sure that they're on board and understand that, there's an injection training that needs to happen. And, there's so many other little things that go into it. And then keeping the patient compliant too. I think that's the other part that can be difficult, is making sure that the patient is aware that, you've got to come back in for a follow-up appointment. Otherwise, I'm not going to have any chart notes to send into the insurance for reauthorization time. So yeah, there is a lot of work that goes into it. But, I really, the joy is in really just helping patients and seeing that all the hard work is not, it's not done in vain. I guess
Yeah.
if you want to say that, I think that's the biggest thing is just knowing that what we're doing is making such a huge impact on patients. But I really do enjoy the education and the training side. And I think that's kind of where I started speaking and really helping to educate offices. And that's kind of where BC educators came in. Um, my goal was to create as much resources and support for other people that are doing the same thing as I am, that may not have specifically the title of biologic coordinator, but maybe access coordinator or just, you know, doing wearing a million other hats and doing the prior authorizations. So just really creating that support and awareness for that role. And, that was my biggest goal because it shouldn't be a burden on everybody in the office. I think it should just be focused, one area because there's so many different nuances that go into it. And if we're able to really streamline that process, then, the outcome is much better for your patients.
Yeah, 100%. And like you alluded to, it's such a complex process, the whole getting biologic medications. And in dermatology now, it's even a lot of our other regular medicines that are not
Mhm.
necessarily really high level or they're still needing prior authorization. So basically there's the biologic coordinator is also just a lot of times become the everything prior auth person as well. There's so much complexity to it that if you don't have the processes in place, it just becomes a huge burden for the
Mhm.
office rather than this like positive workflow that gets to results for patients, gets medicine more quickly. We've
Yeah.
talked a lot about this too, as in the because I've on the physician side, I've done a lot of work on okay, how do we not burn out our staff? How do we get the medicine to your patients the earliest? Because sometimes if it's a
Mhm.
different staff member doing the process, they're learning a lot of things from scratch that a really experienced biologic coordinator just knows like right off the bat. And
Right.
that skill set can really decrease your time to getting treatments for patients, and you probably decrease time to headache too, right? Because you probably know what to
Mhm.
put now just to get stuff approved so you don't have to go back and do denials and all
Yeah.
of that.
It changes so often too, and that's the thing I think, we forget when there's new, especially if there's new drugs coming out, we see you send that in and we get pushback from the insurance because they're wanting certain scoring tools or tried and failed therapies. And how else will we know that? We wouldn't know that unless we're doing those prior authorizations. And, when we start doing multiple ones and you see what plans are coming back with, certain criteria and things like that, and it changes every single year. So, there's no way that ever that your whole staff would understand how to document properly for specific biologics or specific specialty medications that just came out even. So, it does make it difficult. So, and that's where I think it's so important to have all of those resources available. And there really hasn't been much, up until recently. Now there's some conferences and things that are available now for other coordinators. And, I still run into some people, they're like, oh, there's there's training, there's education for this, and,
Right.
because there really has not been anything up until recently.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting to see that, but just know that there are, you know, places to go, people that you can reach out to and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this issue and, trying to get access for this specific medication and, or with these payers." And, I think that's where it's important to know all of that. But yeah, having that one person that's dedicated to it, I think makes such a huge difference that can really help educate the rest of the staff as well.
And how does BC educators work? Do you, or you can just tell us the structure? Can you kind of
Yeah.
outsource your biologic coordinator needs to your group, or is it that you come into the office and teach
Yeah.
the existing staff, or a combination of both?
So we kind of do a little bit of both. Our focus is to really support the office and take that burden away from your office staff. So we can place a virtual coordinator to work in the office. But before we do that, we really like to help create a streamlined process because we don't want to just throw somebody in to the office to start doing prior authorizations when we're not able to actually get anything approved. And that really starts with the documentation. So we will do like an overview with the office staff. So any of your MAs and even the front office, just to give a general idea of what we are doing and how we're able to work with the office, what patients are coming in for specialty medications. And when you think about the front office and how, because you think at the front desk, I don't have anything to do with that process, but you really do. Everybody plays an important role. So really helping everybody to understand that we all have to work together as a team, to be able to get our patients on these specialty medications that you know otherwise could have so many barriers to getting them access. And it starts at the front desk, whether they're coming in and getting insurance cards, pharmacy benefit cards, or just being a smiling face for that
Right.
patient that is, that has psoriasis, that is stressed, that is, got some depression going on, and, is coming in and maybe upset because they haven't been able to get a medication that works. So the first thing they see is that person at the front desk. So, really helping them understand that everybody has such an important role. And then, we talk about documentation and what's needed and what we've seen. And we create a lot of resources to really help tailor it to, maybe the EMR system and how they can properly document, adding protocols or adding certain things in their templates that make it a little bit easier for the staff, because that's our goal, is to relieve that burden and the stress, when it comes to the access portion. So what we'll do is, really create that training and tailor it to the office. And then we'll place that remote coordinator to be able to work and handle all the prior authorizations, be that single point of contact for the patient and for the office, which makes it a lot easier because you're getting less phone calls back from the patient wondering, what's the status of my medication? Or you sent this medication yesterday and I haven't heard anything. Why is that? And that always happens because they're expecting, we all want it done right away. And I think, a lot of that back and forth, that we see or delay with the patient getting their medication can be from maybe not having certain things documented in the chart notes. And so insurance is saying, hey, we didn't see this, even though you marked that the patient tried and failed this medication on the prior authorization form. We don't see it in the notes, so we can't approve anything. So now we got to go back and forth. And it creates so many delays. And, patients could be waiting, for
Mm.
4 weeks or longer sometimes. And when you have one dedicated person, for us, that turnaround time, we'll know if they've been approved or not within 1 to 2 days. So we're able to get things moving a lot faster, but also connect with the patient so that they are aware of what's going on, and know that, oh, I've got to answer the phone for the specialty pharmacy, and all these little things that we're able to really kind of help connect the dots on.
That's actually such a good point, is sometimes you just have to let everybody know the logistics, like the front office, the patient, the MAs, the
Hmm.
doctors, like simple things that make a difference and avoid that kind of back and forth. And I love the
Yeah.
idea of outsourcing the biologic coordinator. I know we've talked about that before as well. We did a version of that in our practice. We're in a large multi-specialty practice. And of course, every practice is going to be a little bit different, but private practices can probably can benefit the most, I think, from this, because maybe they don't have the volume of like a full-time person in the office being a biologic coordinator, but they could outsource it, and one biologic coordinator could carry multiple private practices or multiple multi-specialty groups, and it just makes so much sense to do it. Our group, what we did was we basically have sort of like an internal, we're at Palo Alto Medical Foundation and we partner with Sutter. So we have this sort of like internal Sutter group. They're not here, they're not in our even in our department. They work all remotely. So they're not necessarily, like a part of your department, but they do prior auth basically. And we've kind of trained them to do it for derm specifically. We did the financials of it. We saved so much money. Or if you calculate how much it costs MA time, because MA time is on average, an MA could be half an hour up to 2 hours doing, prior auths. Sometimes these crazy prior auths that take like 4+ hours, right? Those are like those
Yeah.
outlier monster prior auths. So if you calculate 30 to 2 hours, 30 minutes to 2 hours, even on average, we just took like an average of 1 hour a day of MA salary, benefits, all of that across all the MAs. Okay, let's say all MAs now are spending an hour a day doing this, for
Mhm.
example. Also, that's time that there is no revenue being generated in the office.
Mhm.
So you have to kind of count that in too. Like how much could that MA help you see patients, et cetera, revenue generating piece. So then if you outsource all those prior auths to one person, we kind of figured out that one sort of biologic coordinator or one prior auth person could carry the work of a lot of MAs, not because our MAs are not good, but just because they're also doing 20 other things at that same time.
Right.
It's like any task, right? If you have your full focus on that task and you do it all the time, of course you're going to get better at it, but also that's just what you're doing. So you're going to do it a
Yeah.
lot more efficiently. So we just kind of figured out, and of course we know it decreased burnout. Our staff satisfaction scores were so much better. We know we got patients
Mhm.
medication much earlier,
Mhm.
without a lot of shenanigans of the back and forth because we missed one thing here,
Right.
one thing there. So we know all the metrics that we care about, which is patient care, staff satisfaction, avoiding burnout, all of those, of course, we met. But the big things too, which sometimes as a business is the defining factor, is it just saves a lot of money
Yeah.
for the practice while achieving all those
Right. And
other
and I
things
think
too.
there's a
So
lot of compliance too that goes into it. We're able to follow up with the patient and say, "Hey, I need you to make sure that you follow up with that, your next follow-up appointment because we have to have that chart note to document how well you're doing in order to show improvement so that we can continue therapy." I think that's another big thing too is if patients aren't coming back in for those follow-up appointments, then there's a likelihood that the insurance won't approve.
yeah,
And especially now when they want chart notes for every single prior authorization that we send in and
yeah,
they want to see the documentation. They want to see that, the baseline BSA versus the current BSA. And they want to see that improvement. Otherwise, they're like, we don't see any improvement. Why does the patient need to continue this medication? We're just going to
yeah.
deny it.
And I'm
And it's
curious.
easy for them to say that.
It's so easy. Yeah, the denial comes so easily. And I'm curious, are you working with practices across the US or are you staying kind of regional?
Yeah, we work with practices all over. Our coordinators are all over, so we want to make sure that we're able to help any office that we can. Um, of course, not paper charts,
Right. Paper
but
charts. We
we're
have paper charts if we want to
right.
on the
But
system.
everything else we can do remote. We will be able to set up a contract with an office and partner with them that way. We're all HIPAA certified and make sure that everything is compliant as well. Any platforms that we use when we're reaching out to patients and things like that. But we definitely just make it as easy and seamless process as possible and just being an extension of the office. So um whatever preferences you would have as a provider or we can work with that and we try to really just kind of incorporate into the office workflow.
And I'm curious, actually, just like your experience across the US, do you find it's pretty much similar issues, similar problems? Do you find certain coasts or different states have it harder or easier? I don't know if you've noticed any kind of specific trends. It might be hard to generalize.
Yeah, I mean, different states are everywhere is different. I could see something. I live in Ohio. I have an office in Indiana, and one of the girls that works with me is in Michigan, and you know, these three states right together, you would think they would be very similar, but each state has different plans that are the primary plans that have different criteria and some just don't want to cover anything and they just make it so difficult, but we really stay connected with our sales reps, with the FRMs so that we know the payer landscapes and we're really able to connect that way. We also have a group, it's called BC Collaborative, and any coordinator can join it, but a lot of our team is in there. And so we're able to really collaborate with other coordinators and say, hey, I'm seeing this with, Blue Cross of Michigan. Are you guys having this issue as well? So it makes it nice because, any office that we work with, you now have not only that dedicated coordinator, but you've got a team who is able to really help collaborate and say, hey, I've seen this issue with this plan. So you should be looking for this, or this is how you can get around that issue, and, different things like that. So I think it makes it really helpful because we're really able to streamline that process and make sure that, any issues that we run into, somebody else has probably already ran into it or dealing with the same thing, so we can get better answers a lot faster, and be able to kind of work around anything that comes up.
That's fantastic. Is that like, do you guys have that network up on social media, or is it like email based?
Yeah, so
Where do we get this
it's
nuggets
on
of
our
gold
website, so you
information?
can go to yeah, bceducators.com. And if you there'll be a link on there for any coordinators that want to go to BC Collaborative and join. We always like to add any updated information, trends. If you have questions, that platform is available for any coordinators. And we also have some FRMs on there as well that can join in and answer any questions or ask questions as well.
That's fantastic. And I think it's so important that this line of education is being done. I think there's starting to be conferences around teaching these topics. It's so important to do, just to have this extra piece of assistance that I think many people have
Yes.
struggled through for
Yeah.
years trying to kind of figure it out. So it's fantastic what you guys are doing. And then, since it's the Future of Dermatology podcast, we always, as our last question, ask what you see in the future of dermatology. What things do you think are changing or you're excited about?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, just thinking alone, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's so many biologics that are coming down the pipeline. I really see the need for the support in the office. Number one, education, having a dedicated person that can handle your biologics, because it's just going to get more difficult. Unfortunately, insurance does not make it easy, and they're not going to continue to make it easier for us. So if you have that dedicated person that's specialized, I think is key. Makes it a lot easier, streamlines your process and the workflow in the office. But as we continue, I feel like there's just so many new, not only biologics, but other specialty medications as well, that we're seeing these prior authorizations for. And, just specialty medications in general, they're going to require prior authorizations, unfortunately. But knowing how to document properly, I think is huge. But just kind of keeping up on what's happening and creating that awareness for other offices to know that you're not alone. Other people are dealing with the same issues, and when it comes to getting patient access, but just know that there is support and there are resources that are out there. And I think as we continue to grow, even your derm GPT, being able to utilize tools like that, I think is so exciting, just to see that happening. But there's so much more to come, I feel like. And if we're looking for those resources and we're looking for that support, I think we'll definitely find that. And I think that's definitely where our future is, but it's getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's getting better because of you and your group and the things that were being done to build infrastructure around these things. And I
Right.
agree with you, kind of adopting some of the technology pieces, getting off the paper charts, using AI, just extra pieces just to
Yeah.
help us get through our day as well. But thank you so much for joining us. You're doing such amazing work. It's been so great to hear about it.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Janelle. Perfect. And thank you for joining us on the Future of Dermatology podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Future of Dermatology podcast. Remember to hit that subscribe button and share the podcast with your friends. The more you share and subscribe, the more we'll be able to grow and share our dermatology knowledge. If you have burning dermatology questions, feel free to leave them in the comment below, and we would love to address them in a future episode. And please note that this podcast is not intended to substitute for medical advice from your doctor.